Fiddler on the Roof came out. And we all did it illegally, nobody paid any royalties, but it was doing so well that I wanted to play Kevin. But I got him 2 times a tour. The Taylor Motor Council. I am the most clumsy, unmechanical person. I would not be able to sew anything. But the pantomime, I could make pants and I could do anything. But for you now, that I'm in the golden age years, I would like to do my favorite song from Fiddler. And at the piano, this wonderful young man, watch him play. Okay. You made many, many poor people. I'm not complaining that I'm poor. It's no great honor to be poor. But it's not so bad. I'm using a Yiddish word here and there because I promised I would translate for you. It wasn't so bad. So what would have been so terrible if I tell you, would have had a small fortune? If I were a rich man, all day long I'd be anyone. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. If I were a penny rich, I see my wife, my golden, looking like a rich man's wife with a proper little chin. Supervising me, poor heart's delight. I see her putting on airs, strutting like a peacock. Oh, what a happy mood she's in, screaming at the servants day and night. The most important men in town would come to follow me, and they would ask me to advise them. They're like a solemn wise, and if you please, I'll tell you, and pardon me, I'll tell you, posing problems that cross the rabbi's eyes. Boy, 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 boy. And it won't make one bit of difference if I answer right or wrong. No, when you're rich, they think you really know. If I were rich, I'd have climbed the ladder to sit in a synagogue and pray, and maybe you'd have a seat by the eastern wall, and I discuss the holy books with a learned man 7 hours every day. That would be the sweetest thing. If I were a rich man, all day long I'd biddy bum. If I were a wealthy man, I wouldn't have to work hard. Lord, who made the lion and the lamb, you decreed I should be what I am. But would it spoil some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man?
parents came from Poland. I told a few of you when we were just speaking at Now I don't remember who I said what. You remember old people were like that, and I'm an old person, it happens to me. I forget. Look, I think I've seen you before. I'm just kidding. I decided I'd pick on you because you deserve it. So, my mother and father, when the Nazis came to Poland and they started bombing Warsaw in September of '39, my mother and father had just married, and 3 other couples, friends of theirs, decided to run into Russia. Russia would let you in. It was a hard life for 6 years, but they let you out in 45. And they went back to Poland. And everybody, their families perished in my dying outside of Lublin, where my parents came from. And my father had one cousin in Winnipeg, Canada. And so they went there. I was born May 6, 45, in Uzbekistan, Tashkent. And I was lucky enough to grow up in Winnipeg. And my mother just thrived in Winnipeg because she loved Yiddish and she loved the culture. We had a Yiddish radio every Sunday. So my first jobs were on the Yiddish radio. When I was 7 years old, I began to do what you call Yiddish declamacias. Like if I were in American theater, I'm speaking softly because I want to make an impression. Now you made me louder. I have to. It doesn't matter. So far, I think you're doing very good job. I don't care what Vita said about your playing. And my mother was really a character. And one of the songs that was so popular then, Sophie Tucker, who was in vaudeville and loved doing Yiddish numbers, her piano player was a wonderful man. And his name escapes me, of course, but I'll try to remember later so I'll seem like I have a good memory. Come in. It didn't work, but I thought it would. She was such a character. And so anyway, Jack Young, you see, it came back to me. And so she wanted a number written about her mother. And because Jack Young was Jewish, she was Jewish, he wrote my Yiddish mom. I'll do it in the original and in Yiddish for the Yiddish impaired. Mother of
cared for fashion style. Her jewels and her treasures, she found them in her baby smile. Oh, I know that I owe what I am today to that dear little lady so old and gray, to that wonderful
I was so lucky to grow up in the Yiddish theater that existed in Winnipeg, in a small version. Every winter they would bring the Yiddish actors from New York, and I'll tell you a bit later, I worked with some of them that I saw when I moved to New York to study. And this, these opening jokes, opening story jokes, are, I would say, they're a depiction of how old Jewish jokes were, right? About a klezmer, about a tailor, about shoichet, about a moil, right? There was no astronauts in these songs. There was no things like that. There was no pilots that the girl fell in love with. She fell in love with a shoichet, with a rod, a rabbi, with a chaz. So I wanted to give you a little bit of that color to start with, okay? And if I find my glasses, I'm talking slowly, because if I look at all my pockets, it will probably be the case that I will find my glasses in one of them, the second one. So here we go. Three men, all newlyweds, were boasting about the control they had over their wives. The first one had married an Italian girl. He told his wife to have dinner ready and clean the house. The first day he saw no improvement. The second day dinner was prepared and the house was spotless. The second man married a Mormon girl from Salt Lake City, Utah. He told her to have dinner ready, the house clean, and the laundry done. I'm glad you're listening, because you're not married. This is what it's going to be like. The first 2 days he couldn't see no improvement. On the third day the house was spotless, dinner was ready, and the laundry was done. The third man had married a Jewish girl. He told her, he boasted, to have dinner ready, the house cleaned, the laundry done, and the grass mowed. The first 3 days, he saw no improvement. But on the fourth day, he could see a little out of his left eye. He could see enough to make himself a peanut butter sandwich, clean the house, do the laundry, and hire a landscaper, because Jewish men can't fix nothing. So these were the kind of jokes that those of us around my age grew up with in Jewish life, right? And one of the most wonderful things happened. As Israel became more of a state with a pattern and color of its own, a lot of this flavor went over into Israeli humor. And I kept track. These are from actual personals, people who want to get married in Israel. And this is from the Anglo-Jewish newspapers in Israel. But you can tell that English is not the original language of the people looking to get married. So I'll give you a few. The first one is very close to my heart, because it says, and I quote, Synagogue Cantor, 36. I take out the Torah Saturday morning. I would like to take you out Saturday night. Please write. This one I like. Divorced Jewish man seeks partner to attend shul with, light Shabbos candles, celebrate holidays, build a sukkah together, a sukkah, and 10 brisses, bar mitzvahs, pig and a ben, religion, not important. And this one is just delicious, okay? I think I got this from the Jerusalem Post. Orthodox woman with get, you know what a get is, right? Divorce. Orthodox woman with get seeks man who got get, or can get. You get it? I'll show you my get if you show me your get. I love this. Yeshiva bocha, that means, you know what it means. Torah student in the yeshiva. Long beard, pace, seeks saint in woman. He wants a religious woman, but he didn't know how to express it. But you got it, your husband, no. Okay, now how about this one? I like this one. Jewish businessman, 49, manufactures Shabbos candles, Hanukkah candles, Havdalah candles, Yortzeit candles, seeks non-smoker. Now this, my wife and I had 2 shows about 25 years ago. One in one town around Boca Raton, and one in another town. And in the second one, I was hanging out. There was a Jewish newspaper, Anglo-Jewish newspaper in English, and it had senior personal ads, and I just love these, so I kept it. And I'll try to do it like with the tone of voice I think that the speaker would use, okay? Foxy lady, sexy, fashion conscious, blue-haired beauty, 80s, slim, 5'4". I used to be 5'6". Searching for sharp-looking, sharp-dressing companion, matching white shoes and velvet plus. I like this next one because it shows the optimism of this probably 93-year-old woman. Long-term commitment. That's what she's looking for. Recent widow who has just buried her 4th husband, looking for someone to round out a 6-unit plot. Dizziness, fainting, shortness of breath, none of the wrong. I love this one because I can see this man. He probably looks a lot like you. Mint condition. Male, 1932. High mileage. Good condition. Some hair. Many new parts. Are not what you're thinking. Including hip, knee, cornea, and valves. Is not in running condition, but walks well slowly. And this is my favorite, because, you know, I used to have to remember to learn script fast, you know, that's now. So this one is entitled, Memories. I can usually remember Monday through Thursday. If you can remember Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, let's put our 2 heads together. Now, I was wondering, should I do it or should I not? The Catskills is credited, if you read like the history of comedy, a lot of what we call stand-up comedy began or was nurtured or developed in the Catskills. Everybody, I'm sure almost everybody here, does anybody not know what the Catskills refers to? It was about 90, in upstate New York a little bit, about 90 miles from New York. There were, the biggest were the Concord, Rosingers, and Everly, and so on. And there were, in the heyday, about the 40s till the 70s, In the 70s, my wife was a Catskill singer. I'll tell you about her a little later because she's given me a lot of problems. This is why I'm working here on a Thursday night. So anyway, the Catskills was famous. I said it to you this afternoon because I know from your background, you said you're Armenian, correct? Yeah. Armenians don't speak Yiddish. A lot of Jewish people don't speak Yiddish. But the Catskills was famous because the comedians would do these filthy jokes. I went with my wife when we were dating, 78, 79. For 3 years I was an actor, 78, 79, 80. I would go and I could believe these older Jewish people. Now I'm in my 80s, you know, I look 78, 79. But I would go with my wife and they would do this most incredibly off-color jokes. There's nobody here under 21, right? You two guys in the front row, may I ask your age?
23.
Good, you're safe. And
19.
that's close enough to 21. And you know what?
11.
What?
11.
Please close your eyes. And block your ears. But you'll see what I mean. They would say this stuff to set up. We thought it was going to be the dirtiest joke. But there was no F word, God forbid, an S word. And so I'll give you a few of my favorites that I collected. Now this is about an elderly couple, one night in bed. But they're not here. They're not in this room. So I can read the way the original joke went. Okay? It's called Fondling in Bed. Right? You see how provocative that is? And I'm going to read exactly what the guy who did it, what he wrote. After 40 years of marriage, a couple was lying in bed one evening when the wife felt her husband begin to touch her in ways he hadn't in quite some time. You, the 11-year-old kid, it's not what it sounds like. Good, you like your ears then. It almost tickled as his fingers started at her neck, then began moving down past the small of her back. He then caressed her shoulders and neck, slowly working his hand down. Because you're 11 and I'll be accused and go to jail, I'll clean up this next line. His hand went down over her rib cage, stopping just over her lower stomach. He proceeded to place his hand on her left inner arm, caressed the side of her rib cage. Again, working down her side, passed gently over the backside, down her leg to her calf, proceeded to inner thigh, stopping at the uppermost portion of her leg, continued in the same manner on the right side, and suddenly stopped, rolled over, and started to watch TV. As the lady, the elderly lady, had become quite aroused, she looked at him lovingly and said to him, "That was wonderful. Why did you stop?" He said, "Because I found the remote." I so enjoyed how you were trying to explain it to her. And when she got it, she was like, "Oh my God." So you see, it's set up for you. Think it's going to be, there's not one bad word in it. And that's the most off-color one that I prepared for you. I prepared one more, and then I'll go back to singing it. One of the most wonderful things about America, and this I'm not trying to be funny, I truly mean this, you know. My parents were from Poland, except in maybe small towns. Polish people rarely went for dinner on Friday night to a Jewish house. Jews rarely went to a close relationship with Polish people. One of the most wonderful things in America is that so many of us, all of us really, are the children and grandchildren of immigrants. And Jews can make fun of a Catholic priest, and a Catholic priest, I once did an interfaith service, he told the dirtiest Jewish jokes I ever heard on a Friday night when we had a joint service. So this is one of my favorites, because it's about a Catholic priest and a rabbi. Here it is, I'm going to read it for you. I collected these for you. So far you liked the first one. A priest in a small town was called away for an emergency on a Sunday afternoon while he was about to hear confession. Not wanting to leave the confessional unattended, having no one else to assist him, he called his elderly Yiddish-speaking rabbi friend from across the street in the shul and asked him to cover. The rabbi said he didn't know what to do, so the priest said, "Come over, watch me for a while, and you learn it." The rabbi came over, he went into the confessional, the woman comes in and says, "Father, forgive me, for I have sinned." The priest asked, "What did you do?" And the woman said, "I committed adultery." That's something that adults do for the young man. Okay? Priest, how many times? The woman 3 times. The priest says, "Say 2 Hail Marys, put $5 in the donation box, go and sin no more." A few minutes later, a man enters the confession of self-demise. The same story. He says, "Father, forgive me for I've sinned." The priest, "What do you do?" The man, "I committed adultery." The priest, "How many times?" The man, 3 times. The priest says, "Say 2 Hail Marys, put $5 in the box, go and sin no more." The rabbi told the priest, "You can go. I know what to do." A few minutes later, the priest is gone. The rabbi's there. Another woman enters and says, "Father, forgive me, for I have sinned." The rabbi says, "What did you do?" The woman says, "I committed adultery." The rabbi says, "How many times?" The woman says, "Once." The rabbi says, "You know, go do it 2 more times." We have a special this week. 3 adulteries for $5. So this was some of the type of humor that when I went with my wife, who was a Catskill singer in 77, 78, I saw the last of the Catskill comedians. On Saturday night, they would have a star in the big show, in the big hotels. But some of these guys were so funny, hilarious. But you know, I have to sing a little bit because I signed a very complicated contract. When the young lady called me, you know who I mean, I don't want to mention her name because she already has enough of a swelled head. No, I'm kidding. So when she called me, I said I would sing some of my favorite songs. And as soon as I find the page with the order, I want to do Jerusalem of Gold. If you know the chorus, Yerushalayim Shel Zahav, you can sing. If you don't know the chorus, I'm going to do it 6 times. And by the 6th time, if you don't know it, I'm going to punish you. You have to stay in the front 2 rows and we work a little after that. So go ahead. Are you having a good time so far? Armenians are not humorous people. Some, yeah, your family as well. And look at this, he's playing it without looking at the notes. Is he terrific? Isn't he? of some of the most famous Yiddish numbers and Hebrew numbers, and numbers I hope that you like it. If you don't like it, it's too late. But let me do one more. This one is so cute. Actually, after this, I'll talk a little bit about Molly Picard, whom I worked with, tell a couple of stories. And now, I don't remember where I put my glasses. I probably put them in my left pocket. A biker stops by the local Harley shop to have his bike fixed. I got this from the late Larry Best, who was a wonderful comedian in the Castle. They couldn't do it while he waited, so he said he didn't live far and would just walk home. On the way home, he stops at the hardware store and bought a bucket and an anvil. He stopped by the feed store, a livestock dealer, picked up a couple of chickens and a goose. However, struggling outside the store, he now had a problem. How to carry all of his purchases home. While he was scratching his head, he was approached by a little old lady named Mrs. Cohen, who told him she was lost. She asked, "Can you tell me how to get to 1603 Mockingbird Lane?" And the biker says, "Why, ma'am, I live at 1660 Mockingbird Lane. I'll walk you home, but I can't carry this lot." Mrs. Cohen looked at him and suggested, "Why don't you put the anvil in the bucket, schlep the bucket with one hand, put a chicken under each arm, and carry the goose in your other hand?" "Thank you very much," he said, proceeding to walk the lady home. On the way home, he says, "Let's take a shortcut and go down this alley. We'll be there in no time." Mrs. Cohen looked over at him and said, "I'm a lonely widow, without a husband to defend me. How do I know that when we get in the alley, and I'll clean this up, you won't take advantage of me?" The biker said, "Holy smokes, lady, I'm carrying a bucket, an anvil, 2 chickens, and a goose. How in the world can I possibly, how did I clean it up? Take advantage of it, right?" And she says, "Mrs. Cohen, I'll tell you how. Put the goose down, cover the goose with a bucket, put the anvil on top of the bucket, and I'll hold the chickens." So these Catskill jokes became a style. And when I was doing a little bit of research, when I did this program in another synagogue a few months ago, I couldn't believe when I read a little bit about it. In the 50s, when they did a study, 52 Jews were, in those days, in the 50s, about 3% of American population, 3%. Now they're about 2%. But at that time, 52% of the leading American comedians were Jewish, because we have a wonderful pianist at our shul who became a convert, became Jewish. His son is in the Israeli army now as we speak. And he used to ask me at the beginning when he played for us, when he didn't know Jewish people, he said, "Why are so many Jews comedians?" After about 5 years, he said, "We went for a breakfast at Nat's Early Bite." And he says to me, "Now being with Jews for 5 years, boy, I know why Jews are comedians. Because they let themselves laugh. They made fun of themselves. They made fun of others. They loved to make fun of rabbis and cantors and so on." So why am I saying this to you? I don't remember, because I must have had a reason. I remember. So I want to tell you one of the off-color stories. Oh, this young man, he's filming all this. They didn't tell you that this would be a religious show, did they? Are you following my questions? Good, okay, very good. When I ask questions from you, I expect an answer. Here, when I ask a question, I don't want an answer. So I made up this story. It's a classic. And it goes like this. I made it up about my brother. My brother is not a very religious person. That's an understatement. But for a while, he went through a phase. When he started to go to Japan, and all of a sudden he was more religious. He says to me, "I want to marry a very Orthodox girl." And I said, "Fine, me go to shul Rosh Hashanah. I said, now I go, but I don't want to work with a shadchan. A shadchan is a matchmaker, the Hebrew and Yiddish. He says, I'm going to go up and see a friend of ours who passed away some months ago. He was the most famous cantor in the world in Borough Park, Brooklyn. And so my brother goes to see Vincent, and he says to Vincent, great cantor, he says, I want the girl to be so religious. I need her to come from a little bit of a wealthy family, because it's true, my brother was a teacher, and he made a lot of money, $37,000 a year. And he said to Vincent, I don't make a lot of money, so if she was wealthy, it would be nice, and I want her to be very modest. Okay. About 2 weeks later, Vincent calls, and my brother calls, and he says, did you find the girl? He said, yes. Is she wealthy? Her father was president of Chase Morgan Bank in Manhattan. Is she wealthy? Is she modest? She doesn't wear her dress only over her elbows. She wears it over her wrist. Very modest girl. And then close your eyes just for a moment. And now close your ears. You won't understand it anyway, but just close your eyes. And so Benzine, my brother says to him quietly, but tell me one thing. Is she good in bed? And Benzine said, well, she's very modest. I know she's modest, but is she good in bed? And Benzine, the matchmaker, says, I don't know. He said, what do you mean you don't know? He said, I don't know, because some say yes and some say no. So you can see how wonderful these stories are. Okay, now let's go back and let me tell you a couple of stories about people that I met when I was a Yiddish actor. And this is a true story. I love Myron Cohn. Some of you remember Myron Cohn from the Ed Sullivan Show. He had like no hair, but he used to go like this. And he was a very wonderful, sweet man. And some of you remember or knew the name Jan Pierce. He was a great star of Metropolitan Opera, but he was a wonderful concert singer, period. And he loved to speak Yiddish. Because I lived a few towns away, I was in Greenwich, Connecticut, Cantor. I told him 70 to 78. I was the poorest man in Greenwich, Connecticut by about $95 million. Everybody in Greenwich, Connecticut, nobody was heavy, nobody was too tall, too short. Everybody there was perfect, etc. Okay, and then so this started. The story starts when I was a little boy. I was in the choir at the Cantor, and the slichus service, the midnight service before Rosh Hashanah, in Orthodox schools, if there's a Cantor choir, it's quite elaborate and quite long. If any of you remember from your childhood, it was either at midnight or 2 or 3 in the morning, and it was very long. You know what I mean? Like Ashra, the first word. You know how we sang Ashra? Watch, this is true. We didn't get past the first syllable. A symphony of all kinds of melodies. Finally, we said Ashra, okay? So after this, I had a solo at the end of Ashra. I remember it. Oy vey tzadik Adonai, l'chol derech. I was 13. And after the service, a man calls up to me. This is a true story. And he says, come here. That means, come here. Come here. Come here. My name is Boris Mount. I'm from Regina, Saskatchewan. And they're making for me a testimonial dinner. Because, thank God, I'm in the real estate business, and I try to help the shul. And I like how you said, can you do comedy? I'm 13 years old. Do I have a comedy act? I was in the show business long enough to know you always say yes, but I didn't have a comedy act. So I said, of course I have a comedy act. Are you kidding? I tell jokes all the time. Lying through my teeth because I wanted to get the job, 13. All right? And then, what do I do now? He says it's in this date in 5 weeks, and he paid me $100. $100 when I was 13 years old. That's about what my dad made, in the shop, a upholstery shop for a week, So I was very happy, except I had no comedy. So Myron Cohen, who used to be on the Sullivan Show, his first album was called, I believe, Myron Cohen at the Royal Box. It was a nightclub at the Eden Rock Hotel, okay? And he had 13, 14 jokes on there. So I memorized them. They weren't heavyweight jokes, right? You know, like, for example, this joke was on there. The man is dying, and he says to his wife, Mildred, is my son Jaime here? Jaime says, yes, Dad, I'm here. Is my son Louis? Is he here? Louis is here. Is Moishe here? Yeah. Then who the hell is watching the store? You know? Heavyweight stuff. This kind of stuff. So I memorized these 13 jokes. I knew you must not steal from anybody. But I was 13 years old. I didn't know where you get comedy. There was no internet, etc., etc. So I go and I do this show. So my first one-nighter, like what I'm doing now, I did the first time when I was 13 years old. Okay? Almost 60 years old. I figured, look, I'm never going to beat Myron Cohen. He's never going to know, right? So now we went a little further, and I used to drive Jan Pierce around. We became close friends. And I'm not an opera singer, as you heard me sing. I'm clearly not an opera singer. But we became close friends. And he used to call me Kid. I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I could do a speaking voice. I can't do a singing voice. But he said, once we were driving to New York, he said, Kid, I'm going to do a show with Myron Cohen at this theater in Long Island. Okay? And that was, I knew it was coming. He said, I want you to come. It's 3 shows. And you come and we'll be with Myron and we'll be with Elisa Cashy. Remember on the Merv Griffin show and his radio singer. So I said to myself, I just won't tell Myron Cohen if I meet him, which I will meet him, what I did. And we go before the first show, the first night, there were 3 nights, and Jan Pierce always came early, excuse me, so I schlepped this stuff. Let me take a little water from that bottle. Oh, you gave me the bottle here. Look, this is why you're smart and you're a businessman, and I'm in a thousand in a shul telling stories on Thursday nights. So let me just drink this a little bit. The punchline is, boy, was I thirsty. So, Jan Pierce used to like to come early and we look, there's a big dressing room for one man and a smaller dressing room. And he was a very kind and sweet man, he really was. He says, you know what, I've got top billing, I'm making more than Myron is making. Let's give Myron the big star dressing and I'll take the small one. As we're speaking, Myron comes. And I watch these 2 icons, both about 5'1", you know, in their early to mid 70s. I embrace, and Myron goes, Jan, you look wonderful for your age. He says, Myron, I'm 2 years younger than me. I'm 2 years younger than you. And he says, yeah, but I'm better looking than you. And he says, you certainly are, because you don't make a lot of money, but you look good. Okay. Not that we're talking, we're joking. And Myron, Jan says, you're going to take the big dressing room, and I'll take the... No, Jan, you're the star of the show. I'll take the small. And guess what they did? Honest to God, they both shared the big dressing room. They both sat down. And now, the orchestra was going to rehearse with Mr. Pierce in about an hour. So he says to myself and Myron Cohen, he says, come, let's go for lunch. I said, this is going to be bad. Because now I'm going to sit with Myron Cohen for lunch. And then he introduces me. He says, this is my friend. He's a young Cantor in Greenwich, Connecticut. He says, yeah, Jan tells me you're a good cousin. Sing something, you know, like that. It was just like, and then I couldn't hold it in. So I said, you know what? I got to come to it. I said, Mr. Cohen, I have to apologize to you. I know you for 6 minutes. He says, what do you have to apologize for? So I told him I didn't have an act. And this guy, Morris Malta, was testimonial dinner. And so I stole 13 of your jokes from the Eden Rock, from the nightclub. And he starts laughing. He says, you're entitled to it. I said, what do you mean I'm entitled to it? He says, those were not my jokes. This is true. He was a clothing salesman on 7th Avenue in New York. He says, and these were the jokes that the clothing guys, told in Fargo, North Dakota. I'm not using your town, so I can, right? I did like another joke on that album was in the middle of the night, 25 below zero in January, a little girl comes to the baker's in the back there, and she says, this is a bun that we bought from you, and it was supposed to have raisins, but it had 2 flies. So the baker looks at her and says, bring me back 2 flies, I'll give you 2 raisins. So this kind of stuff, right? So I use these things, and Myron Cohen says to me, and these were the kinds of jokes we all told. I said, you're not mad at me? No. And then the waitress comes, and this is the true story. She looks at the 3 of us, and she figures, obviously, one of the 2 older guys is going to pay, who's going to take the check? And Myron Cohen looks at her and says, this kid is going to take the check. He stole my act. This was this wonderful little Jewish world, Jewish entertainment. And these old guys, now I'm an old guy, they were so full of love and so full of heart. So I'll do whatever I was going to do in a minute, but I got to tell you one more story. Because I told you this in the afternoon. I went to New York to study with Cantor David Kusowitsky. Those of you who might have heard, any New Yorkers here are people who live in and around New York. No, you're normal people. So there was wonderful cantors in New York, and it was a very wonderful, colorful Jewish community. Okay? And why am I telling you this? I must have had a reason. Because I wanted to tell you about the wonderful cantor I studied with. His name was David Kusowitsky. Those of you who might have some of the old cantorial records, the most famous cantorial recording family in history were the Kusowitskis. The oldest, most famous was Moshe Kusowitsky. And I had the pleasure to study with the wonderful David Kusowitsky. And he was the kind of our wonderful hostess of this series, is a musician, and he had a high D. High C is high enough for a tenor, right? And he had an easy high D. Moshe had it and David had it. So David, the youngest of the 4 brothers, I studied with him, and he had this phenomenal lyric tenor voice with a thrilling easy tone. Truly, he could have been, in my opinion, the star of the Metropolitan Opera. So I used to study with him every Tuesday at 11 o'clock. I would go for an hour lesson. And he would never say anything bad about anybody. I never heard him say one bad, whether an artist bombed or not, or never said anything bad. But I used to do the Ilmul and Rachamim, the prayer for the dead, between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, for the Yiddish actors, somebody who might have lost somebody in the past 12 months, right before Rosh Hashanah. I would do the Ilmul and Rachamim. And this year, I was an old cantor who was visiting New York, a very famous composer, and they told me he wanted to do a few Ilmul and Rachamim, Mordechai Yerdeni. I said, that would be fine, that's wonderful. And so he did, and he didn't sound very good, to put it. I'll imitate. He sang approximately it just was horrible, right? So I was happy that he didn't have his voice, because I said in my mind, when I go to my lesson this Tuesday at 11 o'clock, I'm going to hear David Kusowitsky say something bad about a person. So I have my lesson. After my lesson, I sneak in. I say, oh, and Mordechai Yerdeni did a few Ilmul Rachamim with me last Sunday at the cemetery. What do you think of Mordechai Yerdeni's voice? And he looked at me and said, well, when I hear Yerdeni sing, I must admit he has a beautiful yarmulke, a beautiful sock. Okay, didn't work. I'll never tell the story. So here we go. Let's do a little more. I was very, very influenced by a wonderful lady whose name was Molly Pickup. She was the last great star of the Yiddish theater. And I became the last opening act for her story of her life that she did. She was already in her late 80s, right? And she was wonderful. And she used to be so kind to me. I won't tell you how we met, that's too long a story. My plane leaves tomorrow morning, so I don't have time. But she was so nice to me. And she had these little Mollyisms. So she used to say to me like this. She wasn't trying to be funny. You know, Hassel, I'll tell you something. I never took a singing lesson. I never took an acting lesson. I never took a dancing lesson. I'm clearly nothing to look at. But when I put them together, they work. So one night, I used to do an opera number. I might do it at the end if I find that you're responding to my comments. If you continue the way you've been so far, I'm not done this. So one night, I got more laughs than she did with my opera story. Okay, I'll tell it to you in a little while. And so I know I hear about it. And so Phil Shapiro, the manager, is riding us back. Molly is sitting in front next to her. And she turns around to me and she says, somebody got a lot of laughs tonight with the opera story. You got more laughs than me. I think it's time to fire you, Herschel. And then she looked at me and said, a blessing on your head was sehr oisig. You were totally successful. So this was the wonderful Yiddish world I had from 1970 to 1980. What's the next song I have? Havana Gila is a very unknown Yiddish song. I put it down because as I told this young man, I said, if they can sing along Havana Gila, they're okay. If they can't sing along on Havana Gila, that's the last sing-along of the time. So give us a key and we'll try it. Oh, that's good. You're so good. Look at that. Sit up straight. And then you sing straight, okay? So let's start it slow like this. Ha, ha, la, dee, la, la, la. In 39 to 45, like my parents, they escaped. And Stalin let them have a theater as long as you didn't make fun of Stalin. You know? No jokes about communism or Stalin, or you got 30 days jail for a joke like that. So anyway, Jigan had a lot of wonderful routines, and he and his partner were famous for a routine called the theory of relativity. The smart one would try to explain to the idiot the theory of relativity in Yiddish. Now, it's impossible to explain it in English, but in Yiddish you can imagine. So I'll give you a feel of what he was like, and then I'll tell you how I met him and why I'm telling you this story. So Jigan, Schumacher would say to him, Einstein. There was a guy named Einstein, and he would say, sure, I know him very well. Weinstein, my grocery man. Not the Weinstein. This was their, like they were like Abbott and Costello. Exactly, okay? He says, der Einstein, had a theory. Einstein had a theory. And he thinks it's a sickness. Oh, I'm sorry, is he sick with this theory a long time? Is he sick with a theory? He said, a theory is not a disease. It's what is it? And he tried to explain. For about 10 minutes, he tried to explain. And this idiot, he's such an idiot, that finally he says, look! He says in Yiddish, he says, you're walking in the street, and you see a man with 7 hair. Is that a lot of hair? No. But if you drink a glass of milk and you find 7 hair in milk, it's a lot of milk. Relative, it's relative. And then he dies. The guy collapses. So this was Jim. And I had the great pleasure of, when I decided to be an actor for 3 years, 78, 79, 80, I met my wife. And I was part-time Cantor just on Rosh Hashanah and Kippur in Great Neck, New York, which I enjoyed very, very much. It was a wonderful community. And why am I telling you this? Because Jigan was my favorite comedian. Okay, I heard his records with Schumacher. And I'm emceeing a show in Co-op City. Anybody? Nobody here from the Bronx. You know what the Bronx? Co-op City?
My grandma's sister lived in
Right. It was about 25 or 30 huge apartment buildings in the 70s, 78 when I worked there that day, mostly Jewish people. And I was the MC because I could speak English, Hebrew, and Yiddish. And Governor Hugh Carey came in with a helicopter. It was sponsored by the state of New York. And William Cantor, the conductor of the Bronx Philharmonic, who was the pianist with me at WVD and in my shul in Greenwich, he was there with the Bronx Philharmonic. It was fabulous. And I was emceeing. Like now I'm walking around, I forget what I'll tell you another joke. I was having fun. And like they were telling me, oh, the act is stuck. The run is stuck in traffic. Tell another 2 stories. I don't, you know, like that. And after the show, 2.5 hour, 3 hour show, Ben Bonus, the biggest producer of Yiddish musicals and shows at that time in New York, I knew well, comes up to me and says, Hersh, Jigan was in the audience. I said, Jigan was in the audience. I'm never nervous because I like doing this like I'm with friends. This is what I do. I'm not nervous about performing and for a Jewish crowd and doing Yiddish stories and all that. But then I would have been nervous because he was like my idol too. He was like Bob Hope, right? And he wants to talk to you because he wants you to spend, we're going to do 9 months, we're starting in New York, and then we're working all the big Jewish cities in America. I said, well, what do you mean he wants, you want me? I'm honored, but I saw you advertise. He says, yes, we're in rehearsal, but the guy doing the sketches with him, Seymour Rechtzeit was about 7 years old, and Jigan was 7 years old, but he could move, and he liked a little bit of choreography in this. So the first week of rehearsal was a disaster because he wanted to do. Jigan wanted him to dance. So if he wanted me, I go up and I meet him, and he talked like he talked on the record meeting. And well, Herr give us your hand. And I'm just so enthralled with him. He says, I want you to do my sketches with me. I mean, this is like offering me Broadway, right? I said, well, I can't because see, that's like, and Bonus comes in, he pulls me over, don't be an idiot, he wants you to play a season, you're going to work, you just gave up the cantorial job. I said, I can't. So I called Seymour Rechtzeit that night to see if it was okay with him. And I didn't see Seymour's voice. Seymour had a high lyric tenor, you know. He was like I can't say the word because this boy will know orchestrale might be, you know, a very high lyric voice, right? And so I said, hello. He said, Herschel, how are you? It's Simo! I know, Simo. I'm calling you. I know. And what happens? I said, I'm going to cut to the chase. Jiga wants me to take over your role. Be my guest. I hate the bastard. He wants me to dance, to jump, to run. I couldn't do that 50 years ago when I was 20 years old. I said, you don't mind if I take that? I took the part. So now we were touring all over. And we had, this was 78, and we had the most wonderful time in Jewish communities because in that time there were a lot of survivors whose native language was Yiddish. And so it was very successful. Now, Jigan and Isaac Bashev, the singer, knew each other well as young men. When Jigan had his theater, it was out of Lodz initially, then it went to Warsaw, where Isaac Bashev, the singer's father, was a dime. If the two Jews had a fight or a disagreement and they didn't want to go to lawyers, to judges, they did a dentoira between them. Okay, are you with me? So what happens? Jigan and Isaac Bashev, the singer, are both going to be, our tour went to Miami. Bashev, the singer, lived in Miami Beach in the winter. So Jigan arranged that he would speak on Sunday, a matinee, and then a second show at night. He was going to speak in between, and that he would draw because why? He just won the Nobel Prize in 78 for Yiddish, for literature, right? So we're looking forward. I'm the MC of the show. Okay, if you're looking at your watch, I'm on 2.5 hours, another 2.5 hours. So anyway, what I want to say, so the guy who was selling tickets comes and I'm standing here talking to Jigan. I'm going to introduce the mayor of the city of Miami, who's going to give the key to the city to Isaac Bashev, the singer who lives there in the winter. And Ben Bonus is there, and we start. He tells us, the cashier, that Isaac Bashev, the singer, there was no security. People started coming at him and wanting autographs. He said, I don't need this. He went back in his car and went home. So here we are, the beginning of the second half. We've got to introduce the mayor, who's going to introduce Isaac Bashev, the singer. And Jigan sees us talking, and something's wrong. He comes, what's wrong? And so Ben Bowen says, we're in big trouble. What trouble? He says, Isaac Bashev, the singer, went home. So we don't have Isaac Bashev, the singer. We can't go on with the place, the presentation to the mayor. And Jigan looks at us and he says, Mirgefeld is not so bad. And Bowen says, really, it's terrible. What do you mean it's not bad? He said, and I quote, in Yiddish, he says, Isaac Bashev's singer is a short Jew. I'm also a short Jew. There's a Kolsi, you know what a Kolsi. Isaac Bashev's singer hat die Strauhl, he doesn't have hair. Ich habe auch die Strauhl, I don't have hair. Isaac Bashev read English with a Yiddish accent. Isaac Bashev, the singer, speaks English with a Yiddish accent. I do too. And I said to myself, oh, please, he's not going to do what I'm thinking. And he says, listen, I couldn't make this up if I tried. The lighting man is like upstairs, like there's a guy here filming me without my permission. So he looks up at the lighting man. Gee, I couldn't make this up if I tried. And he goes like this, understand? He knew 5 words in English. He goes, Alec! And the guy doesn't move. Alec! And Ben Bowen says to him, who are you calling Alec? Him! Alec! He says, what do you mean? He says, his name is Norman. Why are you calling him Alec? No! You always say Alec Christian. First name Alec, the second name Christian. He is Alec Christian, right? So finally we straightened that out. And the mayor says to me, what's going on? Is everything all right? I said, no. Isaac Bashev, the singer, went home. But Jigan is pretending to be Isaac Bashev, the singer. He says, you can't do that. That's, on whatever he said, under the pretense of it. I said, this is the Yiddish theater. We can do anything we want. He said, and I'm going to be part of it? Yes, I said, today you're going to be a Yiddish actor. And I introduced the mayor, who's going to introduce. And Jigan is so clever. he played several characters in the first half of the show. But the second half of the show, he walked in with a suit, different than he was walking any other time. And I said, now, ladies and gentlemen, the mayor of the fine city of Miami Beach will present the key to the city to the winter resident Isaac Bashevis singer. And the audience gets up, and they're cheering. And I look at them, and they don't know what to stop Isaac Bashevis singer. Why am I telling you this? Because to this day, the people who were in that theater, many of whom are alive, think that Isaac Bashevis singer got the key to the city that day. I couldn't make up the story. I had the punchline to finish it. That was the story. So you see, I had a lot of fun. Now, I'm going to take a little bit of water because I've been eating 2 days. I was in the airports for the last couple of days. Okay. I can see the people upstairs are looking. Is he going to choke or is he going to... All right. So what I want to say, a personal note. I mentioned to you, my parents came from Poland. And this was not a Holocaust song, but it became like the torch song of the Holocaust survivors. Because many of them, after the horrible destruction of Jewish life in Poland and other cities, and other countries, they said, where can I go? Couldn't get a visa to New York, right, to get to America, couldn't get a visa somewhere else. Some went to Canada, some went to Israel, and so on. And this song became like a torch song for them. It was originally in Yiddish, V'yahin zolach gehen. If some of you speak German or Yiddish, where shall I go? Where can I go? Okay? So I'll do it in English and in Yiddish, so hopefully everybody will follow it. It's really one of my favorites, and my mother used to especially like it a great deal. It's all yours.
There's no place I can see. Where to go, where to go. Every door is closed for me. To the left, to the right. It's the same in every land. There is nowhere to go, and it's me who should know. Won't you please understand? And in the original Yiddish, V'yahin zolach gehen. Welchen von mir, wie sie gehen, wie sie gehen. Es ist verschlossen jede Tür rechts, Tür links, und das Neu in jedem Land. V'yahin wenn mich, sucht wenn mir so geht, V'yahin soll gehen.
And in 1949, after Israel was created, the man who made this famous song famous, Leo Fuld, added this, which we do in Now I Know Where to Go, where my folks proudly stand. Let me go, to Israel, my precious land. No more left, no more right. Lift my head and see the light. I
I told you that we had such a wonderful, he's so talented. We had such a good time, and I was telling him some of the stories of the Yiddish theater, which I'm doing for you. And he's, like, this song is very much like those of you know, like the Parisian songs that Edith Piaf and others, like the pianist doesn't do anything till the end, and then you can do whatever you want at the end, and he just picked up the style. So about half of what you heard, he made up on the spot. So give him another hand. So today he graduated to be a real Yiddish accompanist. He picked up the style, he really did, you know. Okay, and his name is Matt Hariki. Am I close? Okay, very good. You know, it's not hard, I don't speak Armenian, he doesn't either, but you know. Okay, so what should I do? I'm going to do for you now, I don't know, they're going to take a risk. And when I wanted you to sing before, you did quite well. The most famous of all the Yiddish songs. I never asked you how long I had. Am I over time now? I'm okay? More? Yeah? Okay, yeah. Okay, thank you very, very much. You're a very nice hostess. You know? I don't know why this man is laughing. It's not a funny line. When I asked everybody to sing, I noticed you didn't laugh or sing then. Now you're laughing. I love to pick on people. Okay. So, this is the most popular of the Yiddish songs. You realize, think about it, from 70 AD, the destruction of the Second Temple in Jerusalem, till 1948, the Jews had no country. And yet they kept an identity through their culture, through their religion, right? And so this song depicts the European scene of the rabbi teaching children Aleph Beis. It's called Oifu Pripitchik. I bet you some of you have heard that title. And if you can pick up the melody, it's not that hard, you know, except for this guy. I don't want you to sing it. I heard you sing it, and believe me. I never used to do that until I saw Jackie Mason. Okay. Before he met me, he didn't talk like that. He didn't talk like that at all. He looked, but that's not a funny line, but I wanted to say it because I worked with him. He used to sound like Eleanor, what's her name? Her husband was the President of the United States. Very good. I'm improvising now, and I don't need to because this next song speaks for itself. So the rabbi is teaching the children Aleph Beis. So when I say ah, you say how did you guess? Good. When I say ba, you say ba. When I say ga, you say and so on. Okay. I'm going to improvise that part, and we're going to see if you can follow or not. You can't follow. You're not getting it. Okay. So can you put us in D minor, the original E minor Bolero, okay? Beautiful. you hum with me now. With Cantor, very good. For in the revel, play the king the love, the for in the revel, play the king the love. Teach us. You did great. Okay. So let me give you just a couple more of my favorites before I sign off. This one happened to me when I was with the rabbi at shul. We were in Israel, and we were in Tel Aviv walking on Dizengoff Street. There was, you know, it's like the main thoroughfare at Dizengoff Street. And Rabbi Shulman's watch stopped, okay? So we're looking for a jeweler, you know, to fix his watch, a watchmaker. So we're walking on Dizengoff Street, and guess what we see? A sign, a picture actually, in a window with 3 watches. So we go in, and there's a Hasidic looking man with a black hat and a black coat and white socks. And Rabbi Shor says to him, "Are you the watchmaker?" And he says, "No, I'm not a watchmaker." "You're not a watchmaker?" "No. But you have 3 watches in your window." And he says to Rabbi Shor, "What would you like me to hang in my window?" You're beginning to get it. Pass it on. Okay. I have a few on another one like that. Okay. I'm trying new stuff in it because you deserve it. All right. So this one is a city in Europe, a Stadt actually, in Europe, and the rabbi passes away. And there's nobody for the Rebbetzin to marry, for it's a little town. And she's used to being a scholar, the rabbi's wife. And so people say, you know, the butcher, he's a wonderful man. You can marry him. Butcher. Anyway, they marry her. They get married. And the first thing that happens on Friday night, the first Shabbos, before she's about to light the candles, he goes and whispers in her ear, you know, "My grandmother Sarah, she told me when I was a young man that before the lighting of the candles, you know, on Shabbos you're supposed to have sex with your wife. So before the lighting of the candles, we should have sex." And they do. The next morning, they're about to go to shul. He says, "My other aunt, Golden, she said Saturday morning before you go to shul, it's good to have sex." And they do. And then they come home from shul, and he starts making the kiddush for the meal. And he says to her, you know, "My grandfather, Moshe Bell, he said that the best sex is right before the sleep on Shabbos afternoon by the Shabbos meal. So it's good to have sex." So they had sex. After they get up, now Shabbos is coming to an end, and he says, "And my great-grandfather, Golch Yankov, he said the best sex is at the end of Shabbos. So we should have sex again." And they do. Okay. Sunday morning she goes out to the marketplace, and she begins to shop, and several of her girlfriends come up, and they say to her, "So tell me something. Your first weekend on Shabbos together, how is married life with the new this wonderful, wonderful pianist that this is not like a pretend. I just did a show a few weeks ago. My son-in-law doesn't make a lot of money, but he married my daughter, so he's a smart man. So he's in Tiburon, in Northern California, and this young man told me that he is often in the city of Fresno. Okay? See, he remembers what he told me. It's wonderful. And so a few times when I had shows in Northern California, and if I couldn't have one of my regular pianists, like tonight, I'm working with the local pianist. So now I have him for Northern California. So I'll see him a lot. And he told me that if I get the right girl, he's willing to have a circumcision, convert. I know I shouldn't say that, but that's from a Johnny Cash song. The big decision, get the circumcision. Oh, he's looking because he thinks circumference. It doesn't matter. So we'll close with this song because I want to leave you with a good feeling. The world is very difficult. Let's do we didn't do Israeli law, all right?
No.
Okay, let's do that before my last song. So I'm going to stretch it 3 more minutes, but I really hope the words of this song, it needs no editorial comment, and then we'll do the Jewish wedding song to clap us out, okay? So F minor, you can find it, yeah? And any intro you want, or what's recorded? Chad Pierce recorded this. I thought it was a great song, but it wasn't a hit. But you tell me if you like it at the end. If you don't like it, you can tell me the truth. I love the words. I hope no Jewish, Christian, or Muslim mother ever has to say these words. I hope peace will come. Good night,
little one, sleep well. May all your dreams be of Israel. The grass is green where your father fell.
lullaby, lullaby, lullaby.
Good night, little one, sleep well. May all of your dreams be of Israel. The grass is green where your father fell.
Lullaby, lullaby, lullaby.
Good night, sleep well. May the crops increase. Someday, my child, we will live in peace. And we will live in a world in peace. With an Israeli
And let's close with the Jewish wedding song. The words are very simple. I want you to sing with me. Listen to the words. Well, you show me the way you live. Listen to the line. Go closer, 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 closer. She said, oh yeah. All right. Sit up and I'll bring you in. Give me the F minor. My wife usually does this, okay?
Oh, Ishama, they will be heard. Be'adrei Yehuda, u'v'chatzon.
Yerushalayim, the voice of bride and groom, the happy voices.
Oh, Ishama, Be'adrei Yehuda, u'v'chatzon.
I don't mean to point you out or embarrass you. He's not singing. I heard him whisper to the lady with the hat. He says, I am not singing. Herschel Fox is getting paid a fortune for this show. I'm singing. So,